With SSX recently making a comeback in Tony Hawk HD not too far down the road, I thought it would be fun to go back before both those series existed, with 1080 Snowboarding for the N64, also available on the Virtual Console. Originally released in 1998, 1080 and other extreme sports games at the time, like Cool Borders and the Extreme games, were akin more to racing games, before more trick-centric games like SSX and Tony Hawk became blockbuster smashes and redefined and cemented the extreme sports genre. In the year 2012, it's difficult to come back to a game like 1080 instead of, say, one of the first two Tony Hawks. It was from a different time, but through a bit of research, I wagered that it's the best pre-SSX and Tony Hawk Extreme Sports game. So, warts and all, it's still an N64 game you should check out or revisit. If you've never played 1080, you'll immediately notice how not SSX it is. First off, this game is pretty tough. Landing a jump isn't as easy as just finishing your grab before you hit the ground. Modern extreme sports games usually have a pick-up-and-play mentality, and 1080 is a game that definitely has a learning curve. I hadn't played this game in years, probably over a decade, so I had to start fresh for this review. At first I chose the Japanese dude, since his character seemed well-rounded, and then I chose a board with super high stats, assuming that was the best one. But I found myself falling behind, and falling a lot. High stats doesn't necessarily mean the best board, and the game expects you to experiment with riders and boards, but this is why you're given a training mode. I suggest you run through this a few times because you'll also need time to become comfortable with the controls. You see, the game doesn't tell you the controls on the options screen, and the instruction book never mentions the most important button, the Z button. Holding Z is key. It squats your rider down, giving you better balance and more speed, but a little less control around turns. Makes sense. But when you go off a jump, it's imperative you let go of Z, and as you come down, you straighten your board and push Z again right before you land. The game doesn't really telegraph this very well, but if you look closely, your rider's knees will bend and you'll lose little to no speed in your landing. If you're off by too much, you're gonna wipe out. Once I got the hang of this, I experimented with a few rider-board combinations and settled on the Japanese girl because she had the most balance, and then chose a board that, despite having smaller stats, made for a speedy and sturdy combination. I'd say there was about an hour's worth of trial and error before I felt like I got 1080. It was most likely just reprogramming my brain because of how much it doesn't play like SSX. After this, I cleared the novice and intermediate circuits on my very first try. However, the expert circuit proved a far greater challenge because worse weather conditions and smarter opponents turned familiar courses difficult again, and I had to change up my rider board combination once more. 1080's racing is a pretty deep, refined experience, a refreshing difficulty. As a racing game, 1080 holds up, but its trick system is terribly archaic. Simple grabs are performed with the B button and a direction on the stick. Spin moves, on the other hand, are executed with crazy rotations of the stick. 180s and 360s are easy enough, but performing a 540 or higher is just insane. Not only are these moves difficult to pull off, they don't seem to help much in races. Numerous times, performing tricks, even when landed successfully, cost me or my opponent the race. By avoiding ramps and jumping only to access shortcuts or to avoid obstacles, I was often rewarded with first place. But there's often giant ramps taking up a bunch of space and tracks, and when I couldn't resist the urge to showboat, I found myself losing ground. And when I wasn't losing ground, I was losing health. Yeah, there's a damn health bar. Why? This cumbersome trick system is even worse than the half-pipe trick attack mode. I once pulled off an insane combo that actually broke my old middle school high score, but I was just spinning the stick and tapping buttons. It was completely by accident. Now that isn't to say that I wasn't having any fun, but when I wasn't racing in 1080, I often found myself saying, why am I not playing Tony Hawk right now? In another signature move at the time, the game features original music, not a licensed soundtrack. The soundtrack is a mixed bag ranging from generic hip-hop to terrible 90s butt rock, but it's all digestible. I really dig this track on the character select menu. Yeah, work your body. You know, a fun generic song about dancing. It's great.
Push it in.
Wait, push it in? They ain't talking about dancing. They talking about fucking. Yeah, 1080 snowboarding. Push it in. Rated E for everyone. Graphically, this game definitely holds up. It's light years ahead of the Cool Borders games. There's the occasional frame rate issue, but it's nothing atypical for an N64 game. Much like the first Silent Hill, 1080 uses fog as a clever way to mask the system's graphical shortcomings. The fog sometimes looks as bad as Turok 1, but at least it makes sense here. There's a real sense of speed, and the character animations are all pretty good. But this was, of course, before the genre was expected to be crazy aesthetically, so some might find the game boring to look at. It's better to remember 1080 as more a racing game on snowboards than an extreme sports title, as its nuanced controls, well-designed courses, and impressive depiction of weather make it an enjoyable experience, while its trick system is almost embarrassing. It's a tough game with a bit of a learning curve, mainly because it was made in a different time, but most of these features aged well enough to merit a recommendation. Just a warning though, sometimes it's tough to go back. I'll see you on the next.
Get Quickie!